embracing the new you. So, like I said earlier, the new you implies that there was an old you. And what do I mean by this? I mean that once we endure a traumatic event, we're reset. We are forever changed, right? So as we're looking at the embracing the new you, I have a few questions like, who are you now, right? And who do you want to be? And who can you be, right? And who do you have to be, right? So who do you have permission to be now, right? So when I talk about, because remember I told you I like to break words down. So let's first talk about the meaning of embrace, because we're talking about embracing the new you. So embracing means to hold something or someone close in a way that infers affection. It's holding something precious, right? So embracing is about accepting without judgment, accepting willingly, accepting enthusiastically a person, an idea, right? Embrace is one of those words that's just like loaded with goodness, right? To be held in a warm embrace. I teach a class, and part of that class is actually just holding ourselves. Just being with yourself, giving yourself permission to be held, to be worthy of love and support, right? To embrace something, just goodness. All right, I could just do that all day, so let's not. So that's what we're talking about, holding something precious, right? So, new you, post-traumatic you. Who are you after the traumatic event? Who are you after the loss of a loved one? Who are you after the car crash? Who are you after the divorce? Who are you after the breakup? Who are you after the abuse, after the neglect, after whatever the traumatic, yes, we all have some kind of traumas. And a trauma is an event that overwhelms the body's current ability to cope, right? So it does no good to think about the trauma that you've endured in the past and judge it from where you are now, right? Trauma is a horrible, disgusting surprise. Trauma is an event that leaves you feeling terrified, horrified, helpless, hopeless, right? Terror, fear beyond imagination. Horror, disgust, like this horrible thing is gonna happen. Hopeless, no hope of stopping it. No one can stop it from happening. There's no hope of this being prevented. And helpless, I can't help myself out of the situation and no one else can help me. When those four pieces come together, terror, horror, helpless, hopeless, that's the moment of trauma, right? So it's not the whole event that happened that was traumatizing, but when you found yourself helpless and powerless to stop this thing from happening. So trauma can happen when you're a kid, when you're an adolescent, when you're a teenager, when you're a young adult, old adult. If you're alive and you care about anything, you can be traumatized, right? Because trauma is the loss of something important. And that importance is uniquely yours. So the trauma that happens is going to be subjective to you uniquely. No one cared about whatever that thing was the way you did. whether it was your personal physical safety, whether it was your house, your spouse, your parents, your friends, whatever, your job, right? Trauma is the loss of something important. And that can range from your personal sense of safety, being at a friend's house and they get robbed, and it's like, whoa, like it shakes your current knowing. So you're never the same after a car crash. You don't drive the same after a car crash. You don't drive the same after a car crash. I can't even say it over, right? And you don't love the same after a breakup, right? Nothing like first love. Everything is possible. Loving fully and openly. If it ends, when it ends, right? Because everything ends. Whether you break up with that person, or that person moves away, or that person passes away because you were with them for 70 years and they passed. You never love the same after a breakup, right? And if you get fired, you never show up at a job the same. So post-traumatically, that's a word I made up, I'm going with it, you're never the same. You're never, ever the same. There's the you that you are, and then there's a traumatic event, smack up against that person. And then there's the you become after that trauma happens, the new you. And so this class was actually born out of a class I used to have when I worked at a psych hospital. I used to work with patients who had just gotten off of their 72-hour hold, right? And they had tried to commit suicide. And in this class, we talked about, okay, who are you now? Because that's not a choice anybody makes lightly. That's not a choice anybody makes lightly. So when you get to that place where you actually do the thing to end the life, very traumatic. The whole body recalibrates, right? So a traumatic event is an event that threatens life or limb. Right? So if you look in the DSM, the holy book of psychological diagnosis, the first question they ask to see if you have PTSD is, have you witnessed or experienced, right? Have you witnessed or experienced an event that caused a threat to life or limb? Right? Obviously it didn't kill you because you're still here, but the threat that the body perceived death or serious harm, right? Fight, if you can, you do. Flight, if you can, you do. Freeze. In that freeze, terror, horror, hopeless, helpless, this crap is happening. It is going down. And the body adjusts. Right? That consciousness leaves the body. And the body endures whatever that traumatic event is. Anything from just being cussed out, if that's never happened to you before, and if it's the first time, or being fired, or being dumped, or crash, or being shot, or being robbed. Endless things. Right? The list can go on and on. So many ways to lose your sense of self, your sense of safety. And that's what trauma does. It changes on a chemical level, mental, emotional, psychological. The body is completely recalibrated. Never, ever the same. What I talked about in the classes at the psych hospital was, who are you now? A lot of people get to this place, this overwhelmed place that I'm just out, I'm done, I cannot do this anymore. Attempt suicide, go to the hospital. After the whole, they go right back home and behave as if nothing happened, right? There's the tiptoeing around them a little bit that happens. Family and friends, are you okay? Or there's the gossiping, oh, they just wanted some attention, whatever it is. But then you're right back to living that life like nothing happened. In that traumatic event, whether it was an attempted suicide or a robbery, in that moment, life was threatened and the body prepared. That's what freeze is. Dissociate, you're out. This is too much. I can't be here. I'm gone. The body prepares for death. But death doesn't happen. So now we have post-traumatic stress disorder. Because now time, space, emotions, thoughts, everything is just all broken up into pieces, dysregulated, disordered, right? So now that you've survived, who you are, who are you now? Who are you? Right? Trauma is the death of who you were. I'm going to say that again. Trauma is the death of who you were. It's also the place of potential birth of who you become. If you know anything about birth, it ain't pretty. Birth is always messy, and it's always painful because there is a breaking open, a cracking open and expanding of what once was. Whether you watch it on Animal Planet, or whether you're a doula or midwife, or even if you plant seeds, there is a breaking open that has to happen to expand and grow into the new. And so the post-traumatic you sits in the delivery room waiting to be nurtured, to be supported, to be embraced, right? There is no back to normal. There is no going back to who you were before the trauma, because you can't unknow what you now know. You can't unlose your virginity. You can't unrob yourself. You can't uncrash the car. You can't unshoot the bullet. But that you survived demands your attention. You are never the same. So, this new you, this new awareness, this new consciousness, right? Remember I talked about in the freeze, consciousness leaves the body, right? We talk about fight, flight, freeze. We've learned more about how the brain works and how the body works and how the mind works. And so in some circles you'll hear fight, flight, freeze, faint. Fight, flight, freeze, dissociate. Fight, flight, freeze. And there's the nothingness, yet the everything that's happening, right? A lot of times now, we're talking about fight, flight, freeze, and appease, right? That you just, the new you just becomes this person. It's just like, okay. And that happens a lot in domestic violence relationships, right? That the victims don't see a way out. So their way of surviving, their way of coping is just appease, 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 right? It's a coping strategy. So with this new awareness, with this new consciousness, the new you is just that, new. You've never, ever, 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 ever been here before, right? The body may look the same, but chemically it's not. And so we start doing things to try to make ourselves feel comfortable. And sometimes that means being isolated, right? Like not being around people. Sometimes we have new desires, and now the desire is to just really stay home and just be close to people who we know and trust, right? Sometimes we have new expectations, and those expectations can look like fear or sadness or anger or rage, like you expect the world to let you down. You expect to be betrayed. You expect to be lied to. You expect. And so now this is the way of thinking as a coping strategy, because horrible surprise, right? We don't want to be surprised again. We don't want to be caught off guard again. And so this new you decides to cope in ways that aren't necessarily adaptive, that aren't necessarily helpful in a healthy sense, but they're helpful in a protective sense, right? So it feels good to just be anxious, to just try to be ahead of any surprises. That feels better than being caught off guard, right? Or it feels good to just do nothing, try nothing. Don't be seen, don't be heard, you can't get it wrong. Just if you don't try, you can't, and that's what depression is. If I don't try, I can't fail. And so we have all these ways of coping post-traumatically. There it goes again, I'm going. Anyway, so we have our ways of coping post-traumatically. And then we start labeling those as depression, suicidal, anxious, post-traumatic stress disorder, oppositional defiant disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder, alcoholic, shopaholic, sexaholic, workaholic, all these different things that we're trying to do to feel in control again. And there are so many different ways to help, right? Medication can help. Talk therapy can help. Group therapy can help. Art therapy can help. Educating yourself, knowing that, sweetie, there's nothing wrong with you. You are doing exactly what you need to do to survive what happened to you. That those things that you're doing have become inconvenient? Okay, fair enough. So now learn new things to do. And that's what this class is about. Inviting you to learn new ways of being after your trauma, new ways of birthing the new you post-traumatically, embracing the new you. Right? Now you have new desires, new awarenesses, new fears, new expectations, new needs, right? Like a new baby, you have the need to be supported and held and nurtured. You need to be embraced. And that starts with you. You are not what happened to you. And when you confuse what you've been through with who you are, you're stuck in a delivery room, right? When you're confused about who you are, you're stuck. And this is an invitation to not only acknowledge that you are new, that you're not who you were before that traumatic event, but to embrace the new you. Hold it dear, right? Like a new baby. Love it, support it, shelter it, find out what it likes, find out what it needs. But when you pretend like, I'm good, I'm fine, I'm good, I'm fine, I'm okay, I don't want to be a bother, you're denying yourself. You're neglecting yourself. You're abandoning yourself. When you deny yourself the time and love and healing that you need, that's its own form of abuse, right? A wound needs healing. Trauma means wound that needs a physician's attention. So post-traumatic stress disorder, anxiety disorder, depressive disorder cause you to pay attention, right? We were joking around earlier about fixing somebody. We're not here to fix anybody. We're here to help you organize the disorder that trauma caused, right? Trauma's like a wrecking ball. And therapy, education, support, love, nurturing, embracing you are all forms of organizing, right? We can't undo, but we can put the puzzle back together and figure out who you are now and validate that. What do you really like? What do you want to do? And I don't know. It's a great place to start because at least you're in conversation. I don't know is valid. I don't know what I like. Okay. Babies only drink formula for months, right? Same drink every single day. Or breast milk, same drink every single day, all day, every day. And that's a start because it has the foundation of some kind of nutrients. So I don't know is okay. Start where you are. What things make you feel not so bad? What things make you feel, okay, maybe I'll try, right? Because what that means is possibility. What that means is hope. And so embracing the new you is about being okay with not knowing, but having a safe space to figure it out.